Today on Pure Pop Radio and Conversation, look who we have here. He's the good-looking guy, not me, the other guy. Is Andrew Taylor of Dropkick, little Scottish band. They got some melodies and some harmonies in there, and well, they got a lot of that. And they are incredible. And if you don't know what they sound like, boy, have you come at a great time. I think, Andrew, you would agree. Andrew was on to talk about the Dropkick album about 3-ish years ago. And right now, in a couple of weeks, well, from when we're recording this, he's releasing a new double disc best of set called, this is just a brilliant title, The Best of Dropkick. See, what else do you need to know?
Well, it couldn't be greatest hits anyway, because there are none.
Greatest hits in my mind of Dropkick. Actually, you were on the show on March 14th, 2018 to talk about Longwave. I wrote it down and everything just so I wouldn't forget. So now we were discussing before, Andrew and I, that Dropkick has released, including EPs and these lockdown albums that he's put out of recent vintage, 27 releases since 2006. And that is, I mean, there's 30 songs on the basic album, the vinyl album, and then you get the CDs, you get CDs of the 30 songs plus a CD of another 20 from across the catalog, if you get the vinyl, which I recommend. So that's a lot of great songs. But the question is, I mean, it's one thing to have 10 or 12 songs on a best of or favorite tunes of Dropkick or whatever you're going to call it. But how do you pick 30 out of 27 releases over a 14-year period? I mean, what's the process?
That's a good question. So Dropkick has had various different lineups over the years and a lot of releases, and a lot of the songs from those earlier albums we don't really play live anymore just because of the sheer number of songs. So the starting point was, what old songs are in the set? What do we play? And then I guess I tried to be relatively logical about maybe just having 2 or 3 at most from each album, and not leaning towards one particular era of the band or one particular lineup. And I think we managed to achieve something that covers the story of Dropkick right the way through. And yeah, something to be proud of, if I'm honest with you, that, you know, that it stretches back quite so far and it covers quite a lot of ground, I think, you know, from our repertoire.
But how do you now? Let's see, minus the lockdown albums and that kind of stuff. I don't know. I mean, 150, 200 songs. I don't know. It's a lot. How do you say, yeah, that one, and that one, but no, not those 2. Nah, I'm not putting that on there. And then you send the thing off to get pressed and you go, oh, wait a second. Hold on a minute. I forgot that. And that one that I said shouldn't go on, well, that should have gone on. I mean, do you have those kind of nightmares, you know, where you...
Yeah, there was a little bit of that. And with the vinyl version, I guess that afterthought was the bonus CDs. You know, originally it was, well, let's have a free download to go with the vinyl. Well, okay, let's make it a CD of all the songs too. Well, hang on, if we do a CD of all the songs, you could also throw in a CD of bonus songs. And that allowed me to get some of those songs that I was gutted not to include into the package. But I guess, I mean, the starting point with these is, it was, if you come and see Dropkick play a gig, and we're playing some older songs and some newer songs, the vast majority of these songs you could hear at any gig. And that was quite important to me. I mean, there are a lot of Dropkick albums, but not all of them are still in print. Some of them have been unavailable for years. So, you know, an example of one of those songs, there's one on side one, which is probably one of the earliest songs, called Obvious. And Obvious was a limited CD release in 2006. And that's been unavailable. Yet we play it at every gig. So the idea of having tunes like that available again and on vinyl for the first time, if you come and see us play a gig, then you know you'll be able to buy those songs. So that was part of the thinking behind it too.
Well, I mean, I'm sure it wasn't just you looking at lists of songs, but who did you consult? Like friends, family, older band members, um, internet poll? You know, the guy who delivers the milk. You know, I mean, how did you determine the final list? Did you look for a lot of input?
I didn't specifically look for loads of input. We did have a chat in at the current lineup of the band, and we all looked at a few lists early on, and we were all pretty much on the same lines, which was great. You know, my brother that used to be in Dropkick and our friend Roy, when they were both in the band Dropkick, they wrote a few songs back in the day. So it was important for me that their songwriting voice was included too. So there's some of their songs in the mix. The other thing that actually helped with this project was because of lockdown and because there haven't been any gigs, I've quite often been doing live streaming shows on the Dropkick Facebook page. And quite early on, I realized I'm going to get quite bored of this if I just keep playing the same songs every week that I would play in a Dropkick gig. So I started making a bit of a point to myself that I would revisit every album. And over the course of, I think I've done over 30 of these things now, I've covered just about every song from every Dropkick album, usually quite badly if I haven't played it for years. But the outcome from that was that it refreshed my mind with a lot of songs that I had maybe put to one side or thought were less important, or you know, just wasn't very familiar with anymore. So that actually helped, you know, me kind of make the list a little bit smaller, but also the reaction that people would maybe have to particular songs that I was playing online. You know, you'd go, maybe that's a better song than I thought it was. So yeah, lots of little things. It's a combination of all these conversations that are going on in your head constantly. I mean, my phone is filled with notes of just lists upon lists upon lists. I mean, the other thing with the vinyl, because it started off only with the idea of there being a vinyl version, although there is CD and digital now, is that you're restricted in the length of time that you can press music on a side of vinyl. So a lot of the conversations I was having with myself, well, is it best to have 6 songs on there, you know, that includes 2, maybe 4 or 5 minute songs, or could I get 8? You know, and you start to look at the timings of these songs as well, and whether you feel like you can justify the longer song at the expense of 2 shorter songs. And you know, it went round my head for months. But it was a happy problem to have.
Well, I remember on Todd Rundgren's "A Wizard of True Star" album, and on the sleeve where you had the lyrics and everything, and then you get a little thing at the bottom, little legend that said, "Since you can only put so much music on a side, please record this album on tape, and then play it back, and it'll sound a lot better." So you know, maybe there's something to that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, so the best of Dropkick is 30 songs. That's a lot of songs, but they're all great. So it's good. It's a good deal. It opens up, interestingly, with a 2020 remix of an upbeat song. There you go, an upbeat song that was on your 2012 album, Paper Trails. But I listened to both, and I'm just wondering, what was it about the 2012 mix that you didn't like or you thought needed tweaking for the 2020 version?
Okay. Well, The Paper Trails album was an interesting time in the band in that we didn't particularly have a fixed lineup. So what would happen was, as soon as I had a song, I would just call together who was available, and we would spend 3 hours in Dropkick's rehearsal room where we record everything. And at the end of the evening, we would have a new song recorded, and I would mix it. And then that was the Paper Trails album. So everything was mixed on Paper Trails after a 3-hour session in a loud room. And I always felt with a few of them, and particularly Until I Fall Away, that I was sure my ears were shot at the time I mixed it. And I should have been more careful with the mixes on some of those tracks. So I went back to that one because I felt like that could be a contender to open the album. And I discovered that there were actually 2 vocal takes on there, and I preferred the alternative vocal take. So it's a different vocal take that's on there. I think it's possibly stripped of some of the extra guitars as well. It's just a better mix. I think it's got a little bit more warmth to the bottom end, and I took a bit more time on it. But fundamentally, it hasn't changed. But yeah, I just felt that maybe for the first song on the album, if that was going to be the one, that it just needed a tidy up, shall we say.
Yeah, it sounded to me like it I mean, I have listened to it a couple of times, but it sounds like a more even-handed mix, or even Steven type of mix, where the vocals may have been a little louder on the 2012 version, and you kind of brought that down a little bit, and maybe brought the guitars up a little bit, so it was more even-handed or all around.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, I consciously didn't want to reference the old mix too much. I just wanted to trust my ears at this point when I redid it, and I think it sits quite well with everything else. So I am quite happy with that now. Yeah.
Well, I thought maybe you could try to talk about how you wrote and recorded some of these tunes, and really is just like throwing darts for me. I mean, because I like so much of this so much.
When you said that, one of the funniest, the best Dropkick gigs we ever played involved a dartboard. I'll just have to tell you that quickly.
Did you really? Did you?
Yeah, because as you're kind of alluding to, too many songs. Yeah. We before the gig we put song titles all around the dartboard of Dropkick song titles, and we asked people in the audience to just chuck a dart, and right, we'll play that. But for Bullseye, we thought that's got to be special. So it was, we'll play any cover of your choice. No one's going to get a Bullseye at a Dropkick gig. So the first guy walks up to choose track one of the evening, Bullseye. Of course, he had to be a dart player, and he chose Another Brick in the Wall by Pink Floyd, which we'd never played before in our lives, and it set the tone for a terrible show. We did it badly. Anyway.
Talk about being outside of your comfort zone. Oh my.
Just a bit,
well, that sounds like Elvis Costello used to do those spinning wheel shows, right?
Yeah, it's a much cheaper, less entertaining version.
Much cheaper. You came like this close to me. Oh yeah. My. Exactly. Okay, well, so another one is that I like a lot is It's Still Raining. Yeah. Which comes from Longwave, which is the album that you were on the show last time that we talked about from 2018. It's got those usual things that people talk about when they talk about Dropkick, Teenage Fan Club, the Byrds, the usual references. But can you talk about the writing and recording of that, whatever you remember? Since it's a best of album, what do you remember?
Yeah, so It's Still Raining was, I think that was the last thing written and the last thing recorded for Longwave. Longwave was finished essentially, and our bassist, who plays on loads of these songs and sings a couple of lead vocals, Scott Tobin, he just told us, he just said, look guys, after we're finished, I think I'm going to hang up the bass, and no dramas. There never really are in Dropkick, but so we had a couple of gigs, and we replaced Scott with our current guy, Alan Shields, And I think I just continued writing. And so there was a couple of songs right at the end when the album was already done that got added in, and Alan played bass on them. So there's a lot of that album that has Scott playing, and then there's a few of the introduction to Alan. So that was pretty much the first thing we recorded with him, the first thing that he sang on, and it was the end of that album. I don't particularly remember there being anything unusual about writing that song, but just that I tried desperately to shoehorn a little bit of a Big Star riff right in at the end on the 12-string guitar, which not played that well, so probably not been spotted by that many people. But
you might be surprised what people spot it.
Well,
they don't always tell. They don't always tell you because they don't want to be wrong. They're like, nah, well, I'm not going to say that.
Well, yeah, it was deliberate. If you spotted it, it was deliberate. But yeah, no, and that one's never left the set since we wrote it.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, here's another one, and this is a little bit different. This was from Abilene Hotel from 2009, so that's a couple of years ago. Bit faster tempo-wise than well, that would be tempo, wouldn't it? Bit faster than a lot of your stuff. And I really like it a lot, especially that country-ish guitar solo at the end, which is a little bit different too. Seemed pretty deliberate to me that you did that in there. You want to talk about that? Don't Dream of California.
Yeah, Don't Dream of California was written by my brother, and that's one of a couple of songs he wrote for that album, and it was one of the strongest songs in the album.
It's really good.
I can't remember why I ended up singing it. It was possibly just more comfortable for me in my vocal range. I don't know. So I ended up singing it, and Alistair did the harmonies, and the solo at the end. Our guitarist at the time, Roy, he does these fantastic kind of twangy country solos, and really is into his Americana, and yeah, it was quite a deliberate Telecaster twangy thing towards the end, and I guess it kind of contrasts with the rest of the song being quite in your face power pop, kind of style. I couldn't tell you a single thing about the lyrics on that song, but we didn't play that song for a long time. For a long time. Probably we only gigged it when that album came out in 2009, actually, until a couple of years ago I got asked at an acoustic gig to play it quite randomly, and I did it because I'm never shy about mucking things up on stage, and I actually realized that I quite like the song, and so I've always kept that in the acoustic sets since then, and if we'd ever managed to play shows that were booked for last year, that was one that was on the list to be relearned by the current lineup.
Well, it's interesting because just the title, it's kind of the title is kind of the anti-West Coast title, because everybody's always singing about coming to California and the land is rich and opportunity is abundant and blah blah blah, and here's the title, Don't Dream of California. It's interesting.
Yeah, I think pretty much in there it's just a cautionary tale about, don't waste your time being in a band. It's not, your dreams are not going to come true.
Yeah,
always pessimists.
I've heard that before. Now, interestingly, 30 songs, best of Dropkick. There's a new song in there, or at least one that hasn't been put out before. Into the Background, which is kind of an interesting title because now it's in the foreground because it's on a best of album, right? Was this an old song that had already been recorded? Is it a new song that you just didn't want to wait for another album, or how did that appear?
It was brand new song. There was a small window of opportunity in late summer back here in Scotland where we were allowed to see people in our homes, and our drummer Mike came round to my garage where I have the garage set up at home. We, as our rehearsal room's still shut due to the COVID restrictions, but I had the garage set up to record in, and he came round and I had just written that, and there wasn't a purpose for the song at that time. It was just, oh, I've got a song. Can you drum on it? And after that, everyone else added parts to it. But the song, I guess, there's parts of that song that are, although it sounds kind of like your typical Dropkick kind of jangly song. I mean, it does kind of fit a lot of those things. There's a little bit of kind of sadness in some of that too, because we lost our original bassist, Stuart Lowe, last year, quite tragically, and he was my cousin. And so there's a few lines in that are very much he was writing in my mind. There's a bit about laughing when chords got mucked up and stuff like that. There's an image of him in my head. Every single gig we played the song. It's on here too, actually. There's a song called Can't Help It. It's the easiest song and it's the hardest song because it only lasts for a minute and a half. But it seems to have about 20 chord changes, excuse me, but they're all the easiest chords. But they never seem to be in the same order in any of the verses. So at every gig we ever played, somebody absolutely ruined that song, and still do now if we ever attempt it. So there's little bits, like there's a reference to that, and basically him and I just cracking up at every show about that. But yeah, I mean, it's so in some respects quite unusual in that there's some lines that just are totally about Stu. But at the same time, it felt after it was recorded that it was very much, it sounded like your classic Dropkick thing. It had the jangly guitars, it had the same kind of tempo. There was no other collection of songs that were going to become an album. And then this project came up. And so I thought, you know what, that would be a good place to put it. That's where it should be.
It's interesting because, my first thought was, because I try not to look at notes and one sheets or anything like that will explain anything ahead of time, because I just want to see what I'm going to get out of it before some PR guy tells me, what I have to look for. And I heard the song and I said, gee, I wonder what album that's on. And I started looking at it. Well, wait a minute, that's not on an album. That's on this album. So
yeah.
That's a testament to your writing, though, right? It is.
Yeah, and unusually as well, I pretty much the only thing on there, I think, that wasn't recorded in our rehearsal space, actually facing each other. I had Mike playing the drums in my garage, but it's a remote recording. It's a lockdown recording essentially with everyone else. Yet it still kind of fits. I think it fits
does.
the vibe. Yeah,
it does. It's really good. We talked about how do you choose the songs and what do you leave off and all that. But I'm wondering if after you've gone through all this trying to choose what goes on the album and come up with a final track listing, and two separate track listings, right? Because you've got one album, you got to separate it into two sides. Same thing with the second album. After you've done all of that, does it give you any kind of a clue toward where you go from this point on, as far as writing songs for whether it's a solo album or another Dropkick album? Does it reveal some kind of secret thing that you hadn't thought of before? Oh, wow, there's juxtapositions there. That says something to me, or whatever it is. I mean, does it give you an idea of maybe what might be different the next time around?
I think it made things maybe a little bit more daunting to start with, in a way, because once an album's done, normally with me, although the songs are still present when we play them live, I don't really tend to listen again. In fact, once the final mix is done, I'm always on to the next thing. As annoying as that might be for the band members, the next album is always my focus. But this made me really, for a while, really concentrate on old recordings. So after that, I found actually that I wouldn't say it's writer's block, but I haven't really written an awful lot since putting this together, because I don't know whether I'm consciously aware of what the best bits of other things sound like. So I'm trying to avoid that and not rewrite the same song. I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking too much about it. I think I'm coming out of it now, but there's certainly quite a few weeks where putting this together, I think, actually mucked up my system a little bit.
Yeah, there's that Paul Simon song, "Think Too Much." Well, two of them, "Think Too Much" A and D. Yeah,
Yeah,
sometimes you,
I think
yeah,
so.
yeah, sometimes you think too much, and that can kind of destroy the vibe. I mean, too, if you overthink something, right?
Yeah, and I was reading at the same time. I don't know if you're a fan, but a book by Jeff Tweedy from Wilco,
Oh, sure, we'll
where
go. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, with his he'd written a book on how to write. It's called How to Write One Song.
right.
And being a fan and being a songwriter, I thought that's for me. But weirdly enough, it made me start thinking about what I was doing in a way that threw me off as well. So, as I say, I'm coming out of it now, but it was the weirdest time for a few weeks where I wrote nothing. My phone is normally uh, bursting with clips and song ideas. The guitar's always there, so there's always something being mumbled into it. And in the last year, I wrote and recorded 4 lockdown albums. The songs were just pouring out, so it was kind of odd, to end the year reading that book, doing this, and then going, "Oh, I have nothing else to say."
Yeah,
But the phone's starting to fill up again, so it's all good.
good. It's all good. Speaking of things getting filled up, the cover got filled up with a very, very, very dynamic, creative. I guess it's a painting, right? From Alan Lennon, who it's this gorgeous children's themed drawing with a happy figure coming out of a Jack in the Box, and he's got an acoustic guitar that he's holding on to, and a dog is looking on, and there's a snare drum that's lighted, and the light is coming out of the snare drum onto the figure, and there's a plane in the air, because why
Yeah,
not?
well, exactly. I mean, Alan's a fantastic artist and designer, and he's done the last 3 or 4 Dropkick albums, and it really. I mean, we keep going back to him and saying, "Well, look, we have to ask, but don't feel obliged to do any more Dropkick stuff." But he's always so keen to get involved, and sometimes I wonder why, because we never really give him much of a steer or a brief as to what we want, So maybe that's a good thing for him. He gets a completely free rein, particularly with this, because there was no album title to suggest anything to him. But one of the things he's been doing a lot of recently is a lot of his artwork has been photo montage, old-fashioned photo montage, and I think some of those techniques where he's actually cutting and sticking photographs and images from elsewhere together is in there. When he presented one of the first ideas, the wee Jack in the Box, he wasn't holding anything, and I think we suggested he should have something musical. So he put a guitar on the guy, and then I think almost everybody in the band thinks I'm a clown anyway. The idea came back, well, just make it your guitar, Andrew. So the majority of the songs in this album were written on that guitar. It's weird. I have so many guitars, but I can only write songs on one.
Huh.
So that's my guitar on the front with the Jack in the Box. And I don't know if it's Mike's snare drum, but it kind of feels it should be. I love it. It's just, I think it kind of captures too that we've never been a band that take ourselves too seriously, and I kind of love it. I think the whole thing, even just down to the font he's chosen, Yeah,
Well,
it's pretty
I was
special.
looking at it and I was thinking it's almost not a literal translation of what a listener might get out of the songs. But there's a snare drum, so that's music that can be made on a snare drum, right? And the guitar, whether it's yours or anybody's, hey, you can write a song on that guitar. And the spirit of a Jack in the Box um, is wow. It's even though some people get freaked out by Jack in the Boxes, but still, it's a happy face.
Mm.
And then the boy, this face that's on the cover, and you have a plane, and presumably that plane is flying someplace fun. I think it shows some best kind of things. Although I thought of my wife when I was looking at the Jack in the Box, because when we were in England one time, we went to Covent Garden and they had all these little booths set up, with
Yeah.
stuff that people make and what have you. And a guy had Jack in the Boxes, all different sizes. And the one that I have, I still have it. I have it now for God, like 30 years or something, a long time. And it's a clown's face, but I have to keep it out of sight because she can't. She hates it. She hates Jack in the Boxes. So but anyway, you just reminded me of that. Anyway,
I, I think one of the things is, it looked great to us to start with. And, when you open the gatefold sleeve and it's got some old flyers and ticket stubs and things and album sleeves that he's put together, but when you see it, it's only a week or so since the vinyl arrived, when you see it as large as that, as a proper piece of art, it is really quite a thrill. I think he's maybe done his best work for Dropkick with this one.
it's a beautiful cover. It's just, I mean, if you go onto the Bandcamp page for Dropkick for for the album, you'll see what the cover looks like. It's something to behold, as is the music contained therein. 30 songs, you buy the vinyl, you get 2 CDs with the same stuff on them and another CD with 20 extra tracks from across the catalog. And it's really one of melodic pop's best catalogs. If you like that kind of stuff, if you like Teenage Fan Club and the Birds and all that stuff, you know, Andrew has it coming out. It's Andrew. It's Andrew's going to influence somebody else with that guitar that's sitting right behind him there. He's going to write some more great songs on it that people are just going to enjoy the heck out of. So it's the best of Dropkick. It's if you love harmonic music, you gotta have it. You can get it from Bandcamp's Dropkick's Bandcamp page on vinyl and CD and as a download. So whichever you prefer, but get the vinyl because it looks cool. Looks real cool. And it comes out on March 5th, and I assume it'll be at all the usual online retailers that everybody goes to. And
yeah.
So it won't be difficult for you to get. But right now it's in pre-order status. And, I can't think of anything better to do today's a Wednesday. So on a Wednesday or a Thursday or a Friday, whatever day of the week you like best, that's the day you should go get this album, the best of Dropkick, 30 great songs. So Andrew, it's great having you on today. Let's not make it so long between visits. Have you on again, for whatever reason.
No, it's been lovely to talk to you, Alan. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And thank you. And remember, Dropkick, the best of Dropkick on March 5th. See you later.